Hey everyone. Excuse me, I've been a little hoarse lately. It's seasonal effect. It's not COVID. Don't worry. I get sick this time of year because of the season change. I get sick like twice a year. Once in the spring, once in the fall because of the season change. It happens. Don't worry. I'm safe. Anyway, wanted to do a post because I'm sure as those of you who closely follow the life of Jason M. Cutler know, my birthday is not only is Monday my birthday, but it's a rather ominous milestone, and um, because of COVID, and especially with COVID really being out of control here in Milwaukee. In Wisconsin in general. It's a shit show. Um, I'm going to do, not going to be able to go out and partay, as the kids say. So, since it's going to be kind of a lame, at home alone um, birthday, I do have a friend coming up, going to bring me some Aurelio's pizza. So, I do plan on doing that on my birthday. But otherwise, it's going to be kind of a lame 50th. What I thought I would do to occupy myself and fill the void of the empty void in my life that is COVID, I ordered a bunch of records. I got a pretty thick pile of records. A lot of these are, I should say, I didn't spend $10,000. Some of these are fairly expensive, but most of these are $1 or two. I've said before, what I'll do is I'll find somebody on Discogs that has a very large catalog, 30,000 plus records for sale, where they'll be cheap, and they'll charge $5 flat for shipping one album, 1,000, and you can get a lot of the classical was obtained that way actually. But none of this is classical. Well, one of them debatably, we can argue about that. But wanted to do a little bit of show and tell. I found some neat stuff, a lot of soundtracks, which I've been focusing on lately. The first one, a movie, even if you saw, you have forgotten, and you should forget, Absolute Beginners. The reason I bought this soundtrack to a forgotten movie is the Bowie song Absolute Beginners, which I would argue is uh, probably the best track he cut in the second half of the 1980s. Better than anything on Tonight. Certainly better than anything on Let Me Down. Never Let Me Down, but Let Me Down. Um, the title track to this, which you can get as a 12-inch. Interestingly, the individual 12-inch is like $40, but the soundtrack that has the exact same extended version of the song Absolute Beginners I got for $1.50. It does also, the other selling point is there's kind of a neat Ray Davies of the Kinks song, Quiet Life on here. Everything else, meh, but it's worth it for those two songs. Next, I got a couple of National Lampoon albums. Back when National Lampoon was funny and not just, you know, shitty vacation family films or kind of lowest common denominator humor. Back when it was very mean and cutting in the 70s. And this is a compilation. I got this mainly because the other two that I got don't include Magical Misery Tour, um, which is, what is his name? I can't. Tony Hendra. And it is a vicious piss take on John Lennon at that time. Obviously, Lennon was still alive. I would look it up. It's on the YouTube. Magical Misery Tour. Like after you hear it, you kind of can't listen to early solo Lennon. My phone made a ping noise. Yep, I'll deal with that later. Next one is oh good God, people love me. Next is a double. Monty Python album, Monty Python's previous record, uh, with on the flip another Monty Python record. So two legendary Monty Python albums. You know, don't need to explain more. Next is another soundtrack. If you grew up in Chicago, they used to show this movie on WTTW all the time. It's one of the I actually read all the books too by Delacorte. Um, it's a really weird French movie from the early '80s, um, where like a bike messenger bootlegs an opera singer, but there's also a tape of like a blackmail tape, and the tapes get or like a confession to the cop. I don't really remember, but like a tape that criminals want to get, and like the tapes get swapped, and there's like these new wave French criminals, chasing this bike messenger, and it's a weird movie, but they used to show it on WTW all the time when I was a kid. Soundtrack is really cool. It's like a weird mix of opera and like synthy stuff. Next, this was a coup. This I didn't know existed. Um, Joe Speaks. If you are familiar with the movie Joe, it is a fairly young Peter Boyle as a sort of racist, reactionary, blue collar, his generation of Trump supporter types. Um, and he and this very, upper middle class, prosperous guy meet in a bar, and his daughter, who's played by a freakishly young Susan Sarandon, is like involved with like drugged out hippies, and they get all angry about the hippies, and um, carnage ensues as this sort of Park Avenue um, suit and this working class Palooka buddy up in their war on the hippies. And this is apparently an entire album of the incredibly offensive dialogue of Peter Boyle's character Joe. Um, it's good to have. I can't imagine listening to it too often. I would hate to think like somebody outside hears it. What the? Yeah, that must be AM radio. Um, Next is the great album Cosmic Wheels by Donovan. Yes, I do actually own this album, but the previous copy I purchased has a warp to it that's fairly distinct on the first track of both sides. So I wanted to replace it. The next album, and it's a great album by the way. It's one of of his '70s stuff. That's one of my favorite albums. The next, people might ask me, Jason, what do you think the worst, most ill-conceived movie of all time that you've seen is? My response: Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Let's construct a movie out of basically just Abbey Road and Sergeant Pepper. For some reason, they chose those two albums. No other Beatle albums appear on there. Um, we'll get Peter Frampton, a fairly lightweight individual, and the Bee Gees, um, and lots of peculiar celebrities like Steve Martin singing Maxwell Silverhammer, Donald Pleasance singing She's So Heavy, George Burns fixing a hole. Um, it's a horrible, horrible movie, and it's a horrible, horrible soundtrack. It is just, and I was reading something. I think it was Robin who, after making the film but before its release, basically said that there are no Beatles albums now. We have what we have accomplished is so profound it has erased the original Beatle albums. As it turns out, that is not true. So this musical abortion of an album lingers on in thrift stores and basements. Absolute torture. So bad I have to own it. Just because I got to imagine there's some scenario where I throw that on, for the uninitiated, and just like Jupiter the Infinite blows their fucking minds. The next album at the other end of the spectrum, this is a find. This is something I had no idea existed. I saw it for sale and looked it up, and I heard a bit of it on the YouTube. This is an astounding record. The Naked Carmen, it identifies itself as an electric rock opera. If you are looking for a rock opera, it is a lot closer to Atom Heart Mother than it is to Tommy. The whole premise is, as explained in the liner notes, they wanted to combine um, rock music and classical, and so it's the Detroit Orchestra, it's the Metropolitan Opera, and then like a bunch of rock people and the cast from Hair. Um, this is such a time capsule and inside there's like a 16-page booklet of like collages, very like counterculture collages. This is like something from space. If you ever see this album, buy it. You need to own this album. The Naked Carmen. It's various artists. So there's no artist, but the Naked Carmen. Get it. Um, Next is in a slightly different direction. Well, north, I guess. The Bob and Doug McKenzie album. I had this as a kid. It's funny. For those of you who are fans of Rush, Geddy Lee appears on here. There's a song called "Take Off." Um, it is self-deprecating Canadian humor. Um, Another humor album. Hopefully, Dave DiCarlo has turned off at this point. The Missing White House tapes by National Lampoon. Um, they stick it to Mr. Nixon on this album quite harshly. Um, from Africa, I don't usually like to buy albums without sleeves, but fuck it. It's Esoteric Records. Music from Africa. One side is the Malinki. The other side is the Baul. I listened to one side of this already. It's African music. Like this isn't some like Paul Simon little wimpy midget singing in front of some Africans. This is actual like African music. It's really cool. Nina Simone's first album. It's a repackaging, which I'm not normally a fan of. This album was originally called Little Girl Blue. Unfortunately, her first album was not her 60s albums were all on Philips, so they've had really good reissues. But um, this album was on a dink ass label that's long since disappeared, and so the only version that had the original cover with the original title was a really crappy version. Like the cover looked like a Xerox. Um, Whereas the sound is really good. It's put out by Wax Time. I don't know if that's a legit label or not, but it's a well done transfer. Nice 180 gram if you're into that. Donovan Live. Um, I have to look up. I'm not sure what year this is. I think this may be fairly early, based on the songs that appear on here, but it's Mr. Donovan Live. I love the Donovan. John Lee Hooker, my first John Lee Hooker album. That's my story. This album is the motherfucking jam. Um, if you don't own this album, buy this album. Um, it's funny, a lot of these guys like John Lee Hooker and BB King and on, Junior Wells, I sort of know them from the back end. Like they were all old men in my lifetime. They've all died, but they were all like, old men, and they would be sitting on a chair on stage, and um, the music was kind of touristy. It was sort of for those white assholes that go to Blues Fest. It wasn't very bluesy. It is blues in this sort of commercial, Chicago, especially living in Chicago. I had that crap shoved down my throat so much that, it took me a long time to come to blues music. But this album, man, that's my story. You need to own it. Another must own, there's a couple of must owns coming up. Hall of the Mountain Grill, Hawkwind. It's Hawkwind, man. It's peak era Hawkwind. It's Hawkwind, like, I think, 74. One of the last with Lemmy, obviously. The problem with Hawkwind is there's such a turnover of members that, it's almost, except for Brock, the one consistent, it's such a variable band. But I've been working my way through getting all of Hawkwind up through the mid 70s. And so this was missing from my collection. It was not the cheapest record I've ever bought, but, I needed it. Another great album, much less expensive, I was surprised to discover. The Last Poets. The Last Poets. We all had the CD in like 1993. I'm probably not the only person in the world who first heard them on the soundtrack for, oh God, what is the name of that movie? Performance. They were sort of black power, political poets, and they read this very angry sort of fight the power poetry, just a percussion. It's really cool. It's probably not for everybody. The sleeve is beat to hell. I'm going to have to actually tape it because the sleeve is split, but the platter is in good condition. So much less militant. All that jazz. Hey Jason, do you have any albums with Roy Scheider singing? All that jazz. Jazz. National Lampoon's Lemmings. Seminal album. We all know it. We all love it. Another recent discovery. Somebody is going to correct me on the pronunciation, but this is a band that I'm going to be buying more albums by. Osimbiza. Osimbiza. It is an African band. I'm going to look up a little bit more. I don't know much about them. It was a blind buy. But, man, this is good. This is some good ass, like, heavy psych music by an African band. So it's got elements of traditional African music, but mixed in with, like, heavy prog. This is one to watch. I'm going to be getting more of this. Last two. The producer's soundtrack. Not the fucking Nathan Lane, Matthew Broderick bullshit. The producers. So not only, of course, does this have the real version of Springtime for Hitler, but worth the $1.50 alone for Dick Shawn singing Love Power. If you've ever seen the movie, you can also see the clip on the YouTube. He's a hippie named LSD, and he's auditioning for Hitler, and he and this all-girl band perform this satire of hippiedom song called Love Power. That is the price of this album. Everything else is a nice bonus. But that song, and that song is not in the fucking Nathan Lane bullshit version either. Um, Finally, original soundtrack for the Magic Christian. Um, Meaning I have both of, because I have the Candy soundtrack, so I have the entirety of Ringo Starr's 60s non-Beatle movie soundtracks. I don't know what that means, but and they're both from Terry Southern. I just really, yeah. So every Terry Southern book that was made into a movie with Ringo Starr, I now have the soundtrack. This is not, by the way, Magic music from the Magic Christian, the Badfinger album, the one with like it's like a hand and there's like a finger through the finger. There's like a nail through the finger and it's like a hand in a town square. It's a cool cover. Then it's a different album. There's a little bit of overlap. Come and Get It, of course, is you know, the big Badfinger song. And Carry On to Tomorrow, which I actually prefer, is my favorite Badfinger song, is on here. Um, but, you know, you also have, like, you know, the mad bits of the dialogue and, yeah, just all the fun sort of Something in the Air, the Thunderclap Newman song. Um, uh, you know, just everything you'd have on a soundtrack. Here it is on Magic Christian. It's a DJ copy, you know, with some nice little pictures on the back. It's a soundtrack album. I one of those great things about vinyl was soundtrack albums. I don't really feel like CDs communicate. And certainly, obviously, then you know the little digital files don't have the sort of movie tie-in magic that these had. So that's it. Um, like I said, I've got some pizza coming on my birthday, but otherwise, you know, it's going to be a quiet one. Um, but that it is what it is. I'm not out in the streets. I don't have the COVID. I'm not out of work. All the things a lot of other people are dealing with. Watch the documentary Totally Under Control on Hulu. Find out just how completely out of control COVID is. It really gave me a freak out last night. I am in need of a haircut. It's getting kind of bad now. But that's it. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and if I don't see you before then, happy Halloween, and love y'all.